This is Christopher Maldong of Chris's Storytelling Corner. Today I'm going to do a movie review for Studio Ponoc's Mary and the Witch's Flower. Next time I'll have a manga review for Skate Beat Volumes 9 and 10, a reading of my fantasy short story, The Witch's Origin, and a movie review for Black Panther. Check out my Twitter page and author's Facebook page. Links to all these will be provided on the description. I'd really like to hear from you guys as well, so leave any comments and make sure to subscribe and share this channel as well. So, the way that this is going to work is that I'm going to give a recap of Mary and the Witch's Flower and then give my thoughts on the movie. Initial grade for the movie would probably be something, probably a B minus to B. I'll give more on my thoughts here, but I don't think it's great. But I thought it was solid enough. Good animation too. So here's a recap of Mary and the Witch's Flower. We're shown a scene where a red-haired woman takes something from a flying island and escapes on a flying broom. We're then introduced to Mary Smith, who lives in the countryside with her great aunt Charlotte, Miss Banks, and the gardener Zebedee. Mary appears to be bored. As she tries different things not to be bored and pass the time, she runs into Peter, who is mean to her. She sees a cat and follows it into the woods and finds that there are two cats. She then finds a mysterious flower and picks it. She shows the flower to Zebedee, and he tells her that it's a flower called fly-by-night and it's very rare. Mary runs into Peter, who tells her that his two cats, Tib and Gib, are missing. Mary runs into the forest while it's covered in mist to find them. She finds Tib, who has a piece of fly-by-night in his mouth. He goes to a certain tree, which has a broom stuck inside of it. Mary gets the broom out, and Tib spits the piece of fly-by-night at her. It gets all over her hands and on the broom, and the broom starts to move on its own. Also, there are markings on Mary's hands. With Tib on the broom um, and Mary on the broom, they fly into the sky until she reaches a floating island and she crashes. They run into Flanagan, who is very serious about brooms and takes Mary to Endor Academy. At Endor, Mary meets Madam Mumblechook, I think it's Choke, Mumblechook, and Doctor Dee. Uh, Mumblechoke believes that Mary is a magic prodigy due to her red hair and abilities. As Mumblechoke finds an application for her to apply to the school, Mary finds and takes a book of master spells. Mumblechoke gets suspicious and asks Mary what she has, so Mary hands her a paper with Peter's name and address on it. Mary mentions the flower, and Mumblechoke is intrigued. They then go to the entrance of a room where experiments of transforma- transformation magic are taking place under Doctor Dee. Mary hears a sickening noise, and Doctor Dee tells her to leave. As Mary leaves to go back home, Mumblechoke has the paper in hand and devises a scheme to get the flower. She puts a spell on the paper and it flies off. Mary almost crashes home as she doesn't seem to have much magic power anymore. When she reaches home, the markings on her hands leave. The next day, Peter is missing, and a piece of paper that she gave Mumblechoke flies into Mary's room, and an image of Madam Mumblechoke uh, appears. She tells Mary that she'll release Peter, who she kidnapped, in exchange for the flower. Mary flies to Endor to make the exchange, but Mumblechoke steals the flower and does not make the exchange. She captures Mary and throws her into the one room where she heard the noises. I honestly forgot what the name of that room was called. It's like the storeroom or something like that. Inside the room, there's these chimera-like animals that are imprisoned, including Gib. Mary finds Peter, and with the use of the Master Spellbook, frees the animals and turns them back to normal. They escape, but before they can fly away, Madam Mumblechoke uses a spell that grabs hold of Peter's leg. He tells Mary to leave without him, and she does. They then take Peter prisoner to use as an experiment. The broom takes Mary to an island. On the island is a cottage, and it's the home of the broom. She finds old pictures of Doctor Dee and Madam Mumblechook. She touches a mirror and sees great Aunt Charlotte, who speaks with her. Charlotte was apparently the witch from the beginning of the movie, who stole the seeds and whatnot. And she tells Mary the story of her, the flower, and Endor. Madam Mumblechook appears wanting the Master Spellbook, and Charlotte tells Mary to use her magic to go home, but Mary decides to help Peter. Uh, Mary flies to Endor with Madame Mumblechook chasing her. Uh, Mumblechook gets hold of the Master Spellbook and retreats. Mary on land gets help from the animal she rescued as the broom actually broke in half. She climbs to where Peter is, and they conduct an experiment on Peter using the flower, but it goes wrong. Mary gets hold of the Master Spellbook, and with the help of Peter, uses undo magic to reverse everything that happened. With the help of Flanagan, who repaired the broom, Mary and Peter then fly away back to their home. So, before we get into my thoughts on the movie, I'd like to plug my author's website at www.chrismolnon.com, and you can read a new blog post every week on there. Um, Also, do you like anime? Do you like action, adventure, fantasy? If you watch this movie already, um, there are a lot of correlations with this movie and my book, The Mustard Prince in the Condiment Kingdom, which you can just buy for $4.99 via ebook on Amazon.com or on my author's website. Um, you know, my story is like this. It's a fantasy story, use of magic, different worlds, and more. It's middle grade, but like children can read it and whatnot. Um, and it's just a fun read. Links to buy it will be provided on the page description. So, on to my thoughts on the movie. So this is a Studio Ponoc production, and it honestly has a feel of a Studio Ghibli movie. That's obviously because the staff of Studio Ponoc and the people that worked on it were pretty much former Studio Ghibli employees and staff and whatnot. Um, so it's pretty Studio Ponoc will pretty much. It looks like it's going to set the standard for Studio Ghibli. It's pretty much a new Studio Ghibli moving forward. This movie very much had the feel of a Studio Ghibli movie, from the animation to the style of storytelling. Um, it's a combination of a lot of Studio Ghibli stuff as it is, and other movies and media. There's obviously the Kiki's Delivery Service stuff with her flying on the broom and whatnot. Um, the way that Peter kind of became a blob at the end was a little Akira there. They go to Endor, which is a little Harry Potter. Um, the blob thing can even be like, well, they use the blob thing a lot in a lot of Studio Ghibli movies. So I can't even say it's truly Akira because everything from Princess Mononoke to Ponyo uses like blobs of weird blobs of you know whatever. Um, Lots of influence, but it feels like a Studio Ghibli movie. I guess um, the animation is absolutely Studio Ghibli, and the style. The way the characters act and the way the villains act are very Studio Ghibli as well. So let's get to the characters. There's Mary. I gotta say this with the overall characters. My own personal thoughts. I didn't really find any one particular character um, a standout character. It's like, man, I'm gonna remember you know, geez, let me think. Princess Kaguya or something like that. Or you know, there's like certain characters, Nausicaa. Like she's not. Mary's not Nausicaa. It just she doesn't have that same like pathos. She doesn't have that same character development and whatnot. We get her motivations. We understand Mary. She's a kid. She's kind of bored. She wants a change. Um, and she was just introduced into this new world. And, you know, magical stuff happens to her. She's found to be very, exceptional thanks to the flower and her ability to use magic. So I can understand her. I wouldn't say she's like a super standout character. She definitely steps up when the need arises to. Um, she's not like. Well, with Studio Ghibli, I mean, they always make. One thing about Studio Ghibli with like the adults, they generally don't. They make the kids seem really smart, as you can see, and the adults they, they don't always paint them in the best light. You saw it with like Spirited Away, especially. I mean, they literally turned the adults into pigs. And then it's the kid who works, who saves the day. And I mean, in here, I, I I didn't really get the impression that Mary was like the adult here. She seems just like a kid, you know. Um, but when she was thrust into the situation, I guess she did act like an adult. And the adults here, Mumblechook and Doctor Dee, weren't exactly super on the up and up. Um, but like I said, I can't really say that like Mary is the next Nausicaa. She's more. She reminded me of like Pippi Longstocking or something to that nature. With Peter, he was just kind of there. I mean, if anything, I mean, he did the heroic thing of like sacrificing himself so Mary can leave, and then helped her out at the end. But like for the most part, I mean, maybe there's some sort of gender role reversal here. I don't know, but you can actually kind of think of him as a damsel in distress if you actually think about it. It just came to my head right now. It's like, because he's the one that needs saving, not Mary, you know? Um, there wasn't much layers to him. He kind of makes fun of Mary. I think he likes her. I think she likes him, but like they don't dwell into that very much, which I like. Studio Ghibli stuff, like Ponyo and whatnot, really got into these go nowhere love stories. You saw it with Mononoke as well, where I was like, they'll have this love story and it just kind of goes nowhere. Or like with Ponyo, which has this weird children loving each other, and it's like, are they gonna have a relationship or something? Um, I'm kind of glad that they limited the relationships to like the cats pretty much. I mean, I suppose Mary and Peter, like I said, they like each other, I suppose, but they don't dwell on it, and I'm kind of glad they do, or that they don't dwell on it, because, like I said, a lot of times Studio Ghibli will put the love story aside. Even like Princess Kaguya, she had that thing with that one kid from the village who ended up getting married and whatnot, and it just kind of falls by the wayside. So, like I said, I'm glad that they kind of left the the romance to a minimum. I like Madam Mumblechook. She was a very typical. Her and Doctor Dee were very typical Studio Ghibli villains. this was a Studio Ghibli thing that I always see, and it's always the villains aren't truly villains, and it's very much a Studio Ghibli thing, you know. Eh, if anything, sometimes the villains actually end up joining the good guys. You saw like Spirit, Howl's Moving Castle with what's her name, the one that grew really old, kind of joins up with them. Um, he didn't have the motley ragtag crew of or party that is kind of. Well, you had the broom, you had Mary and the cats, I suppose. So I guess that's a Studio Ghibli convention there, where you just have this like motley crew of protagonists that kind of just join up together. You saw with like Spirited Away had that. Howl's Moving Castle kind of had that. Um, but yeah, this one doesn't have it so much. But it did have the villains that aren't exactly villains. You know, they just wanted to have magic available to everyone. They weren't truly evil. They just did evil things that are deemed evil. I guess in the name of science as well. But like, they weren't necessarily bad people, and that's a very typical Studio Ghibli thing. Um, it's that's really all I gotta say about them too. As far as this movie goes, it's kind of a children's movie, and or it is a children's movie. And I remember talking to a friend about it, and the way the movie kind of goes, it works in a pendulum where it starts strong, it kind of drops off, and then it ends strong. It starts really strong, especially with Charlotte's story, and then he kind of just go into like Mary getting to know the world and the circumstances and whatnot. Once she reaches Endor, then it starts, you know, and everything that starts happening. Even then, like once they get to Endor, it really is just more world building and whatnot until they reach the end where it's just pretty much all action and whatnot. Um, I'll say this about this movie. Uh, as a personal opinion, I don't think that they were trying to like reinvent the wheel with this movie. Whereas I think Studio Ghibli movies like actually try to do that a couple times. This is not one of those times. I really think Studio Ponoc just more so than anything else. I think they had some material they wanted to keep making movies, and I just got the impression that like they just wanted to make a solid movie. It really was like a good solid first effort from Studio Ponoc. You know, I wasn't too bored by it. You know, some parts in the middle I was kind of bored by it, but overall I thought it was pretty fun. I can kind of relate. If that was the case, I can definitely relate to the idea of not trying to like reinvent the wheel. I do that with I pretty much did that with the Mustard Prince too. I just said, yeah, look, I'm gonna write a story about certain characters and stuff I like, and just kind of have fun with it. You know, I'm not trying to like reinvent the wheel or like really go so far off logic or anything like that. Um, and with this movie, Mary and the Witch's Flower, I kind of got that impression too, where it's just kind of like, okay, like it seemed like they combined some elements from Studio Ghibli movies and other media. Um, just kind of had fun with it. Tried to make it solid. There aren't, there's not much to criticize with this movie. Honestly, like there's the only criticism I have of the movie really was there was like kind of like plot hole that they never delved into, and that was that with Charlotte just kind of when she's talking to Mary through the window or the mirror, she was just like, "Oh yeah, I lost my witch's power." Oh, and that was kind of the end of it. I'm like, well, that's convenient, I suppose, because um, otherwise, because Mary possibly, if she had some sort of line to a witch, Mary could indeed actually be a true witch instead of an like an imposter witch, which she kind of was in the movie. Um, Otherwise, nothing was too. There wasn't anything too out there. I understood everyone's motivation. I understand the sense of urgency, the the overall plot. There wasn't like some big holes or anything like that per se. That I can think of off the top of my head. And so, like I said, I don't think they were just I don't think they were trying to reinvent the wheel here. I just think they're just trying to make a solid movie. And like I said, for Studio Ponoc, I thought it was good. If you decide to watch it, I think it was fun. Um, I don't think it's an oh my god, this is the next Princess Kaguya, Nausicaa, Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, or yada yada yada. It's not the next one of those, um, or Lupin or Castle of Cagliostro or something like that. It's not one of those. But it was in my opinion, a solid effort nonetheless. Um, good for families. If you like Studio Ghibli stuff, I suppose I think you'll appreciate it at the very least. If you're not like a child, um, you can at least kind of appreciate the animation and whatnot. Um, like I said, it's not gonna blow. I don't. It's not one of those movies that's just gonna blow you away though. And there's no big message. There's no environmental message. There's no technology message per se. Um, you know, there are some messages here and there about change and kind of doing what's right when things are hard. But like, there isn't like some huge message here. Like other Studio Ghibli movies tend to have. So that's all for today. If you like this, don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment to this channel. Thank you for listening to this movie review. Next time, I'll have a manga review for Skip Beat Volumes 9 and 10, a reading of my short story, The Witch's Origin, and a movie review for Black Panther. Thank you, and until next time.